Okay, you are live.
Excellent. Good evening, everyone. It is January 2nd, 2025. We are here on Zoom for this subcommittee meeting of the zoning regulations review. In terms of commissioners, I see Mr. Lenke, Mr. Knoyer, Mr. Hill, Ms. Salsi, Mr. Poplawski, Mr. Krogel, and Mr. Williams. And for staff, I see the Director of Planning and Development, the Zoning Enforcement Officer. I've got Mr. Santos and Mr. Blackmer coming in.
Russ Robin emailed me a little before 5 o'clock. Apparently he and his whole household are sick, so he's probably not going to make it. He therefore asked that we hold on talking about the dark skies stuff until the next, which hopefully will also be the last subcommittee meeting. That actually makes it easier to take the draft in order anyway, so I think that's fine. But just so you know, he's not going to make it tonight probably.
Great, that is perfect. Thank you. And I'm sorry about that dinging that you keep hearing. It's driving me crazy as well. So with that, I just want to remind everyone we're going to continue with the process that we have been following. Tira will make her notations in the draft document and submit those to us as the record of the meeting. And so with that, I'm going to mute so that noise doesn't do. You can all hear the noise that I can hear, right, from my computer?
I can hear a little clicking, Joe, but I don't hear a dinging.
No, neither do I, Joe. Nothing.
Okay, good. I'm glad.
I was gonna make you feel better, Joe, and just say, yeah, I could hear it because I didn't want you to think you were going crazy. So I can hear it. Yeah, Joe.
I can tell you exactly what it is. Like, you know, the noise when you take out or put in a USB thing, it's just doing it over and over again. So it makes me feel better that you can't all hear it, actually.
All right, happy New
Year.
But with that, we can begin the review.
Okay, so Happy New Year, everyone. Picking up where we left off, actually, just briefly before that, I just want to call your attention, but we don't need to discuss it now. I did have a little bit of additional input from Alvin and from Cindy and Meg about some definitions and also some other language, maybe for some stuff that we had already gone over in the special permits. I think if we have time at the end, since Russ wants us to hold off on dark skies, we can go back to that. Regardless, anything we don't get to in this one, I think we should plan on next week. Yes, next week, as hopefully what will be the last of these review meetings to try to keep to the timeline to get this for the January meeting. With that said, where we left off was Article 8, CRD, Chapter 275, Section 8.3. We did go over dimensional requirements and came to a consensus to go from 4,500 square foot minimum to 13,000 square foot minimum, where we left off, because I think we all expect that it will take more discussion, is Cindy's suggested revision to also include a net buildable area per unit of 4,500 square feet in the common residential area. Certainly you all know that I do not like that provision. I object to it very strongly, but this is your time to discuss it as a group.
I'm in favor of it, what Cynthia wants. I think it's our decision that we make it. We do respect Cynthia and you on your what you feel is right or wrong, but it really comes down to us, the P&Z members. What we feel is what we need to do to satisfy the people of this town of Thompson.
So you are in favor of the 4,500 square foot per unit is what you just said.
Yep, and that's just with the CRD, but wait till we get into the RRAD area and everything, so let's continue with this one going forward.
Ray, I see your hand up, and then Brian.
So we're going to 13,000 square feet. So that, but then they still need 4,500 per unit. I thought that 4,500 per unit was for the 4,500 square foot lot. So if they got a 13,000 square foot lot, there's got to be 4,500 square feet of usable area there.
That's what they're saying the 4,500's for, and your answer is no, it doesn't have to be. Could be, could have wetlands on it, or could be all ledge. I can find you some land that you can.
Okay, all
13.
right. Well, I understand now, Randy, what you're saying. But I also sent out a spreadsheet of what all the other towns have to all the commissioners about 2 months ago. And for what they have per unit and what they need for multiple units. And I think we ought to follow what that spreadsheet was that I sent out to everybody.
Ray, I don't think I got that.
I sent it to the commissioners. And plus, whenever I send you something, or if I send something to Joe, it comes back undeliverable. So I don't know. I figured you guys blocked me.
No, I would never block you, Ray, but that is weird. That would be helpful for me to see. If you could try to send it again, I would appreciate it.
But I know all the commissioners got it. Well, I don't even know if all the commissioners got it, but I sent it to them.
Yeah, I'm looking right now, Ray.
I sent it about 2 months ago.
I think I did, but I'm getting old and senile, and my memory's not good.
Well, I mean, so the suggestion that's been made here that we've been working with is a net buildable area per residential unit of 4,500 square feet in the common residential district. I will once again reiterate that that would mean that of the very few multifamilies that exist there now, none of them would be able to be built. If somebody, you know, had a similar size lot and wanted to build something like what's in the neighborhood now under these guidelines, which is part of the reason I object to it. But does anybody, I mean, I hear JBL in favor of it. Ray is obviously in favor of either this or some other net buildable area per unit for square feet. Does anybody else have anything to contribute? Well, Santos, you've had your hand up.
Yeah, I want to make sure I understand, and I might be in outer space with this one, but so essentially it's for each unit. So
Okay. So if you had a
you'd have to
duplex,
you'd
you
have-
would need,
the maximum would be 2. Because you can't get a third,
correct,
so it's just 2.
correct. On a lot of the minimum size.
It's just 45 plus 45 is 9,000, so you can't get another one after that.
No, but
So-
that would be plenty. 2 on a 13,000 square feet. That's plenty.
But all of our other regulations max it out, so it would be net buildable area would be 13,000 square feet.
Well, not quite all of them. The
Almost all of them. I looked it up before, but it's probably like there's half of them are the full.
right, and the area, so in the first go round, net buildable area in general was taken out of the regulations. And when I got my late comments from Marla with wetlands, she had made specific recommendations about putting a net buildable area back into districts which had a significant wetlands profile. So most of them do have some wetlands profile. The two exceptions, I believe it was just two exceptions, was the Common Residential District and the Thompson Common Village District. From the perspective of having wetlands constraints, there was no significant impact there. So there was no need, in her opinion, to add an additional net buildable area restriction, which is why those two districts haven't had it.
Yeah.
So this suggestion for a net buildable area is introducing that conceptually for a totally different reason, which does not have to do with the physical capacity of the property.
I mean, math would just tell me just to make it for each unit and be 4,333, so you could get 3 units.
Either that or raise the lot size to 13.5 and then you get your,
Well, I was trying to do that last time, but people were thinking I'm crazy because it was like 13,000 and some odd number.
Remember that, Brian?
Well, I think it was the odd number we didn't
Yeah,
like.
it was the odd number.
Yeah, I
yeah.
know. So now we're gonna get an odd number here at 4,333, but I would go for 4,333.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Brian. You're suggesting a net buildable area of 4,333 square feet per
Each
resident.
unit. Yeah, so it's just, the math goes to 3. 3 units.
You'd basically be adding a unit from 2 to 3, is what he's saying, by
Correct.
changing the
On
math
a
very
property
slightly.
of the minimum lot size, yes.
Correct. Yep.
I don't know, I
Sheriff,
think,
do you hear me? Yeah.
Was that you, Mike?
It is. I don't know how to raise my hand on this new machine here I have.
Oh,
I have a
okay.
question because
So
I
Ray
missed
does
the,
have,
because I missed the
Ray does
last
have his,
meetings.
go ahead.
Okay. Let Ray go.
No, I was saying you go and then let Ray go. I just was pointing out that he had his hand up. So go ahead, Mike.
Oh, okay. All right. I missed the last meeting or whatever, and I understand the 13,000 square feet, but I don't have a problem with a 10,000 square foot because it's a quarter of an acre and you have town services. But what happens with this if you want to put on accessory dwelling units? How does that work in a, I don't want to call it a city lot, but in a residential?
In the CRD.
Lot. Yeah,
Yeah, so that would be taking away from the residents of the CRD who had less than that amount of square footage, the right to have accessory dwelling units.
you know, and as for wetlands, I'm sorry, I don't have much use to them to start with, but because I feel that as long as it meets the yep, now I'm losing my mind. The sanitation department, what you want to call it, not the WTCP, but
And
the one down in Brooklyn there.
DDH.
indeed,
Yeah, you know, I mean,
NDD.
yeah, as long as it meets their qualifications, what do we really have to worry about anything else? And I know that may be simpleton, but
I don't understand what you're saying, Mike.
Well, that is
the
fundamentally my
Northeast
point,
District, the
Mike.
Northeast District of Health, I mean, wetlands, I don't care if there's water on somebody's property or not, if it stays away from the septic systems, do what the heck you want with your property. As for town services, it's great. I don't want to see a city in this town. I think it's horrendous. And I don't think 20% of the people in this town would like to see 3 or 4 units like what's over there on First Street. Okay, that's congested. Yeah, it did take away blight, but it didn't make it any better either. So, I mean, this is a very, very serious problem that we're going to have We don't need congestion. It's like, where are these people going to park over there? Where are they going to play over there? You're not improving the people's not livelihood, but their life any by being congested into a 2x10 area to play. That's just my thought.
So if you don't, so Mike, if you don't have a minimum square foot per unit, then you will have congestion. So what my suggestion is go to, if you want to go to the 13,000 square, whatever. And then per unit, you have to have, my suggestion was
43.
4,500, but if you want to even it out so that you get 3 units out of a lot, then fine, do that, but
Out of a third of an acre,
that's
basically.
what you guys are doing.
So
mean-
before I move on to Ray, Mike, can I just ask you, just for the simplicity of trying to keep where people's heads are with this, are you or are you not in favor of a net buildable area per unit of either 4,500 square feet or
I am in favor of a net buildable area.
Okay, thank you.
I just don't want it to be a little chicken coop thing either. You know, like I say, nobody wants to play in a 5x10 area. It's not, that's not life. We're not the city.
All right,
Mike, I
Ray,
just want to say I agree with you 100%. And I guess I would agree also with Ray and John.
And I'm in
Yeah,
agreement also with Mike and Ray and Ryan.
Yeah, maybe we're spoiled by being in the country all this time, but seeing how things are in, we can all use Worcester as an
We
example.
want to keep it the country.
You know, at least you don't want to have it stepping on each other.
okay,
I have been reading an awful lot on not only communities and towns and cities in this state, but in Massachusetts. They are fighting back due to the housing crisis, as you want to call it, or as it has been put. I don't think any more than 2 units should be on a 13,000 square foot lot.
Well, law says they could put 3 because of the ADA.
Yeah, I
And
know. It
and
opens it
that
up
ties
to
our
a whole
hands right
lot
there
of
a little
other,
bit,
a
but-
whole lot of other problems. I actually just read 3 articles
And-
today.
and-
Yep,
Well, the way all
And
the
anyone
other
can use
towns
that.
have it, the way all the other towns have it, they got between 12,000 and 15 for 1 unit. And if you want 2 units, you got to double it. You want 3 units, you got to triple it. That's
Yeah.
that's what it showed in that. And or you want 4 units, and
Yeah.
I'd be happy to have it if we went to a duplex on the 13,000. If somebody wanted a 3 unit or a 4 unit, they would have to double it. They'd have to go to 26,000 square feet for lot sizes, because that way there your kids got place to play. You know, there's places to park. There's a little bit more room so that doesn't happen what just happened in Southbridge with the houses burning down. You know, the 2 houses burnt, 2 apartment houses burnt down, and a third one, the siding melted off it about 6 or 7 weeks ago. And, all it is a fire trap, and it's all rat roads is what it is.
it's cluster housing.
actually,
Oh,
cluster
wow.
housing has a different legal definition, but that's
Yes,
okay.
I
but
know,
doesn't
yes,
make sense,
but you
yeah.
know what I mean,
Yeah.
cluster housing.
It's
There's other
not,
words.
it's not what Thompson is supposed to be.
Look, guys, we've got a little crosstalk. Joe's had his
Yeah.
hand up.
Okay, I would just like to say, I could think about what Brian or David had said about that 13.5 or whatever. That's something to be thought about.
I was just going to say that when Mike started and he was talking about NDDH guidelines, which is what the current regulations, what we based those on. And to me, I hear that I'm likely in the minority opinion here, but I think that still makes sense. So that's all I was gonna say.
So just for my own clarity, as I'm keeping these notes, Joe,
I would be in favor of keeping the regulations as they are currently written with regards to net buildable area.
so no net buildable area in this district. Okay. Go ahead, Alvin.
Yes, just to answer, to help Mike. We see, you just scroll down and see your video, Mike. Then look to the right, you'll see a image of a heart. Just click on that and that tells you, that'll give you an idea of how to lower your hand.
Well, I
and
see
raise
the
your
hand up
hand,
in
et
your
cetera.
video. I can't scroll anywhere else. I'll get it next time, thank you.
Is there a
Right down at
board,
the bo-
Mike?
on the bottom
And
bar.
Just to follow up, Tira, I'm still in favor of the 4,500 square foot
You, Alvin.
in CRD. Yep.
I, go ahead, Terry, go ahead. I was gonna have,
No, I was muttering to myself, JBL, go ahead.
wow, I thought I was the only one.
No, I mutter to myself all the time, I assure
I-
you.
I have a question to throw into this, just so we all can maybe get a better perspective, I guess. Is that we're, even with the CRD, there is some areas, I believe, once you go beyond going up, I think up Route 200 and out that way, where there is no sewer, water, or whatever, utilities for for them to tie into. So that's why we went with the 13,000 in my mind with a 4,500 square foot. So if they had to put in, go through NDDH in that area, there would be sufficient amount of area to do that. Because we have to know we need to know exactly where the line is for the CRD and the RRAD and all of them, so we can at least adjust accordingly to that. In my mind, because there is some spots I believe in CRD that will not be able to hook into any of the utilities.
If there's anything on the map that indicates that, then that would be an error. When we actually added some properties to the CRD
Yep.
last year, I want to say, it was done based on I think it was the building office that called it to my attention, that there were properties that had full utility access that had not been included.
Okay.
So I had the tax office pull me a report of all of the properties that have utility connection. And that's when we amended the CRD to add more properties, but there should be no properties included that do not have water and sewer access. There may be properties that have sewer access that have opted to have a well. If you, as I understand it, if you have access to municipal sewers, you must tie in, but you are not required to tie into a public water system if you have land that, can produce water on its own. So I do believe there are some of those. But if they had a sewer bill and they weren't already in the CRD or the DMRD or the TCDD as applicable, then they were pulled into the CRD.
Oh, well, yeah, okay, thank you. Now it's something that we know a little bit better about. So now we can make the adjustments to it for the verbiage or whatever it is. If they can do their own well and still tie into the system, that's okay. But still, I like to stick with the 4,500 square foot, structure and 13 and what is it, 0.3 acreage, and keep it balanced.
Does anybody else have anything?
I have a
here?
question. When you said we added properties to the CRD, is we the commission or is we someone else?
We would be the commission because the control of the regulations and the zoning map flows through the commission.
Correct.
Because I haven't seen the breakouts with the street level. I've only seen the more broader one that's online. I'd love to see one that has the streets broken out. To John Lanky's point.
I'm sure I could put my hands on that for you again tomorrow. Yeah.
I think it would help to visualize. That's all. I think that would be very interesting.
Let me make a note to myself here. Ugh, can't type tonight.
If I may, while you're doing that, Tara, is that if we do that and if we can keep it balanced, because it did work out for Mr. Munford on Buckley Hill Road with his units. He's got 4 units that are sold,
Mm-hmm.
and he's got 2, and I think he's got 1 more that's on hold, and he's got a shot at, you know, the 6th one. So that's, see right there, that one worked good there. It worked out, took a while, but it did work for that area. You know, it fit the zone. It fit the district. So that's how I'm looking at it. I'm basing on that for the other districts. You know, what would be the minimum or the maximum, you know, as we move out into the other district.
Well, the Buckley Hill condos are in the DMRD.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, just to be clear.
example that originally it was only supposed to be 2 units, but because of the 4,500 square foot the way it was zoned, so he could put a 3rd unit in. It did work out, but it just took a little while, but it did accent the area better. So now people are going to be doing, you know, fixing their property up, you know, and all this other stuff, which is what we're looking for. Well, we don't want to really cram on the outer edges of this town. You know, there's a lot of people that still want to keep it rural, but if somebody wants to do a duplex or whatever on a piece of property that's 13,000 square feet, I'm okay with that.
Okay, yeah, and again, just to be clear about what was proposed, not originally by Greg, but by the prior owner, that property had previously been approved for, I want to say it was it was at least an 8, but I think it was a 12-unit multifamily single structure 830G.
I think actually it was 16.
So what Munford built there, huh? What'd you
I
say,
think
Mike?
it was actually approved for 16.
No, you're talking on Rawson Road.
Um,
That would be Rawson Road.
Oh, I'm not up on Buckley Hill,
16
you mean?
units?
Yes,
You talking
Yeah.
Buckley Hill? Yeah, that's I think
that
that was
was
3
only
units.
2 units.
I think that was 12 units.
What's that?
I think that was for 12 units up on Buckley Hill.
That was originally when Peter Vangel had it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Correct.
But
So
it-
that was a pre-existing, if Munford had wanted to, he could have picked up that pre-approved multifamily of, I guess, 12 units, which sounds right to me. So that's actually, what he built is actually got fewer units on the lot than had previously been approved. So I just wanted to clarify that. So in the interest of reaching a consensus tonight, so we can maybe move on to some of the other stuff. I mean, I see pretty conclusively that the members of the commission approve a net buildable area per unit in the common residential district. So I think we have 2 viable suggested square footages here, one being the 4,500 square feet and one being the 4,333 square feet. The 4,333 square feet, to Mike's point, and Brian's point, but I think Mike was the one primarily making it, was that would then not contradict your allowances for accessory dwelling units of up to 2 by right. So that would be that. So if I could, Joe, can you just do a roll call for each commissioner's preference, and then we'll just assume whatever the majority prefers will be the choice here.
Absolutely. So to recap, we're looking at net buildable area of 4,500 square feet per unit, or 4,333 square feet per unit.
Correct. So essentially, somebody who owned a lot of the minimum size of 13,000 square feet then would still have access to the as of right ability to put 2 ADUs on the property, whether that be an attached ADU inside the unit or a freestanding ADU like a granny shack.
Right. May I ask one more question?
Of
Go ahead,
course.
Mike.
Does it really make a difference then? Because 4,000 square feet would still only allow you 3 units anyways.
Well, I
And
would
45
certainly like
would-
a nice
45
round
would bring you
number.
up to- Yeah, well, 45 would bring you up to the maximum, but you're not gonna get a 4th one in there anyways with either figure.
I do prefer a round number, but that's, I mean, it's fine with me if you want to make it that level too. Joe, how do you want to phrase that?
So Mike, so you're suggesting 4,000 instead of 4,333? Because both of those get you 3 units under the 13,000?
It would still say in the 13, I'm fine with the 4. It's not a proposal, it's just a thought.
Okay, Brian, I think you had originally proposed the 4,333.
Yeah, I understand it's fine for 4,000 because it's just 3 anyway, but yeah, just go with the
Okay.
4.
Okay, so 4,500 or 4,000.
Brilliant.
That's way easier.
Does everyone understand the question before us? Okay, then I will start. Mr. Hill, 4,500 or 4,000?
4,500, Alvin Hill.
Mr. Canoyer,
4,500, Ryan Canoyer.
Mr. Blackmer,
4,000.
Mr. Krogel,
4,000.
Ms. Salsi,
4,500.
Mr. Poplawski,
4,000.
Mr. Lenke,
4,500.
Mr. Williams,
4,500.
Mr. Santos,
4,000.
and I vote for 4,000.
Oh my
Wait.
God.
It's a
Puts us at
tie.
5 to 5.
Does anybody want to be a hero and just change their vote either way?
Yep, 5,000.
Ah, ah.
That's not
Yep.
helpful, Ray.
Well, yeah, it does
Somebody
because
wanna
it
change
eliminates
their
the,
Yeah, hold on. Ray, if you're serious, that actually is helpful.
No, I'm not serious.
Yeah, I don't think he's serious in the way that
Yeah.
it would be helpful, Joe.
okay, the other way to do it and keep more round numbers would be to, instead of having the 13,000, go to 13,500 on the lot size. And then your 4,500 would work 3 times.
Yeah.
Get you totally confused?
No, it
Yeah,
doesn't get me confused. It's all right.
1,000% sense to me, Randy.
Yeah, Randy, that's good. If we go to 13,500,
It gets away from the 333 feet.
Yep. To solve the dilemma.
So because that was a consensus decision from our last subcommittee meeting. Is there opposition to changing that minimum lot size to 13.5?
Well, that just gives another 500 feet to add another, just one more, one more unit. That ain't, that's just squeezing more into a little lot.
It
as
won't
far as
add
I'm-
more, it's just evening out your numbers here.
Well, it adds more if there should only be a duplex on a 4,500, on a 13,000 square feet. I don't think we should do any more than 13 duplex on 13,000 square feet. Every other town's got anywhere from 12,000 to 15,000, and that's for a single family dwelling. So we're squeezing more people in our town that's supposed to be a country town than what the back streets of Webster has, and what Southbridge has, what Putnam has. We're turning Thompson into a city. And the people that
I
voted
think
me
we're
in,
splitting
they-
hairs, and
they
whether it's
didn't vote me in
13
to
or
turn it into
13,
a city.
I think we're splitting hairs, and whether it's 13,000 or 13.5 or 4,000 or 4,500. Just put the numbers, use the numbers so that it works out mathematically. As far as the size of the lot, the 500 feet on a 13,000 foot lot, you won't be able to tell if you had a tape measure.
Tara, how
Well,
many
if they-
lots are we actually talking that that this affects? I mean, it's a gravel pit.
It's
It's
incredibly minimal. And no, the gravel pit is in the DMRD.
oh, that's right.
The bulk of the lots in the CRD, I would say, are what you would consider to be a mature district, meaning there's very little opportunity for much infill. You might get a lot or two that could subdivide, but the bulk of what's there is built. I think the dilemma comes up because we are aware of two relatively large lots, not the gravel pit, but I think they abut the gravel pit on 200, which are in the CRD.
Right.
So I think that would be two highly buildable, highly subdividable, larger parcels, relatively large parcels, which would then be subject to whatever you're putting in place here. But for the bulk of it, you're absolutely right, Dave. There's nothing, nobody's going to be carving out new multifamilies up in the lots. Those are established neighborhoods with a profile. It would be very, you might get one somewhere.
So why don't we leave it at the 13,000 square feet with the net buildable area of 4,500 square feet in those two larger lots? Can't they come in and get a special permit to do that?
Well, the two larger lots would be coming in ultimately for subdivision. The question is the size of the lots he can subdivide into and the types of structures he can fit on each lot. So a subdivision permit is similar to, but different than a special permit, but behaves much the same way.
Okay, so that would take care of that. So if we go with the 13,000 square feet with the 4,500 NBA, then if something different comes along, we look at that time.
But Jane,
We,
if our regulations say something, then we can't
change them.
contradict our regulations at that point.
Well, okay, I understand that. But I know there are different circumstances. That's where I'm going with that. Different circumstances, because there is no way that we are going to be able to think of every stinking scenario that comes down the pike. So we've got to put in what I call, for lack of, I don't want to make it complicated, simplicity. So if we keep it at 13,000 square feet with the NBA of 4,500 square feet, that satisfies pretty much everybody. And then as something comes up, we can look at it at that point. I think what we're doing, what I'm saying is we're trying to figure out any possible thing that could happen, and we can't do that. We can only do what we have knowledge of right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think that's a really valuable point. And to that point, using much the same logic you've just expressed, Jane, I think because we have, you know, those two AD units, that's redundant, those two ADUs by right, right?
Yeah.
Plus, you know, a primary use, to allow those two ADUs, it makes more sense in my mind to have the 4,000, which would fit all three of those potential units that are by right in a 13,000 square foot lot. That's why I think the 4,000 makes more logical sense. It speaks to more plausible situations.
Yeah, I can flip that over on you, Joe, but I get what you're saying. So how do we break the tie?
Well, Randy did have one suggestion.
Get rid of zoning.
Which was tidy. I like a tidy suggestion. Essentially, the dilemma that this creates a couple of different dilemmas. One is, you know, the basic one of what is the minimum lot size on raw land and how many units per. And the other dilemma, and I think this is where Mike is expressing his opinions, and I would share some of those, is that if you're setting the level in a way that restricts people who are already living somewhere who may want to put the ADU on the property, is that the position that you want to take? You know, and an ADU, again, can be inside an existing dwelling, or it can be detached. It's not necessarily that it's two tiny houses on a lot. It could be a granny flat inside an existing single family in a tiny house, or you know, two apartments which generally, if you're retrofitting a single family, would generally be for family, although may be rented out at a later time. So I think there's the other sort of dilemma that you want to balance, is how much do you want to take away from people who already own properties and homes in the interest of restricting people who may own things in the future. Alvin, and then Brian, I see hands up.
Yes, I'm more than willing to change my vote from 4,500 to 4,000. If anything, so we can move on.
That solves it. Amen.
Okay, so I'm just going to note that here.
There's no way in hell you're gonna divide 13,000 feet into 3 exact lots anyway, so you have 4,000, and the
Well,
third
it's not
one
dividing
be a little
into
oversized.
But they're
Yeah,
not
it's not
lots.
dividing into a lot. It's units on the lot.
Yeah,
But I appreciate your willingness to break the tie. So what I'm hearing here, so Alvin moves the needle. So we have a slight preference for 4,000, but we would then keep the 13,000 square feet.
yeah.
That's the minimum lot size.
Okay. And Santos, you had your hand up, or did you put it down?
I'm all set now.
Okay.
That's okay. I'm just moving it for you.
Are you talking to your dog, Joe?
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
It's not his dog, it's his child. Gotta
Oh.
get it straight.
Oh, you don't have to tell me. I know all about having 4-footed children.
There you go. They're 4-footed. They're the best kind to have.
I absolutely agree. Okay, so moving on a little bit, I think the only other complicated topic that we have might be the dark skies, which we're gonna hold off on, because Russ wanted it. So let's just look quickly. So if it's in black boldface, it means you've already come to your consensus in a prior meeting. Here we have some highlighted stuff where I don't think we've really got any controversy. It wasn't necessarily what we arrived to at the last meeting. When you changed the name of the use in the tables of uses to earth, sand and gravel extraction and removal, my suggestion is also change the name of the subsection, so your language is consistent. What was this now? Oh, I believe we did come to consensus under that section, earth, sand, and gravel extraction and removal, that this language under exemptions was preferable to what was there previously. Just scroll over to my note here. And we only talked about that particular language, but I'm just suggesting that we reorder it. I think the flow is better if, exemption number 1 is the agricultural exemption. Exemption number 2 is the 1,500 cubic yard limit. And then this simplified language about essentially moving stuff around on site. Let's see. If anything I'm saying isn't clear, please stop me, have me go back.
You said on the last part of that, when you said after the 1,500 cubic yards, moving stuff around, isn't that why we came to that conclusion? Is what Mr. DeRocha was doing on his property? He was moving the dirt all over the place, and everybody thought he was hauling in and hauling out.
No, that was up on Route 12 on the state line. They had to move soil or move material on site to get a level plane where they're going to put the building, and that put them over the 1,500 yards. And they had to export some out. And the combination of the two was putting them over. I'm not even sure that it's going to solve that problem on theirs. I don't know how much they have to move out, but the idea being that if somebody needs, actually I made the example of over on Donovan Lane there or whatever. He's building a number of houses, and I'm sure he's moving more than 1,500 yards of material. And I'm fine with him doing that, but I don't think that it's fair to say that he can't move it around on that subdivision. If he moves more than 1,500 yards on that subdivision, the way it is worded now, he'd have to get a permit.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ray.
The 1,500 yards, I thought we came to that conclusion as if it's going down the road, leaving the property.
Yeah, I'm not against that. It was just that they wanted to move some around on the property up on Route 12.
Right. If they're moving it on the property, they shouldn't have to come in for a permit. I don't feel anyway.
Right, but the way that it's currently phrased, both the engineer and Cindy agreed that they had to come in for that permit. So this language, I think, and the commission seemed to agree at the last time we discussed it, simplifies it, clarifies that this activity, which is associated with these other types of permits, subdivisions, development, building permits, they don't need a separate permit from that unless, as you say, they're taking more than 1,500 cubic yards of material off the site.
Exporting it, right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Santos.
Well, I helped write that section, so the intent behind the 1,500 yards was if someone was to make like, I don't know, 1,500 cubic yard hole next to their neighbor and just move it on their property, they should come get a permit for that. That's why I wrote that in there, right? I understand it's not leaving their property, but there was intent behind why that was written that way.
I agree, they shouldn't be able to dig a 1,500 yard hole, and be leaving a hole there. It's
Yeah.
unless there's gonna be a big swimming pool.
That, and yeah, and there was like, I can't remember all the exceptions that were written there, but one was a pool. There was a couple exceptions, right? But that's why that was written that way. I just want others, some people weren't on the commission at that time, so I just want to let people know why that was written that way. That's all.
Well, a pool
I-
permit is essentially a building permit, right? It's just a type of building permit. You're excavating and constructing a pool.
I know that's why it was an exception. I'm just saying if, somebody decides they're gonna, I don't know, dig a hole, like I said, and for no real reason, they should come
Yeah,
get a permit for that.
Unless they were gonna dig a pond. A 1,500 yard hole is a pretty good sized hole. It's a hell of a lot bigger than a swimming pool.
That's exactly why I wrote it the way I did.
Well, if you guys want
And
to.
and this answers my question. I'm the one that threw the monkey wrench into this back a couple meetings ago. The way this is worded suits me.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason we do this on an annual basis is because as we discover unintended inefficiencies, it gives us an opportunity to correct them. If there's a better way to correct the unanticipated inefficiency that applied to that project on 200, I'm certainly open to it. This is what occurred to me and is largely based on the language that you had. It was just sort of streamlined.
Just for the record, I'm fine with it. I just
Okay.
I just wanted people to know why it was written the way it was written.
Oh, okay. All right. I thought you were saying you wanted to change here. All right.
Nope.
I understood you, Brian.
I really appreciate it, Randy. Thank you. Happy New Year, pal. Thank you.
Okay, I think we can probably move on from that then. Let's see. Okay, so I forgot that we still had the moratorium on the table because I kind of thought we mostly resolved it last time, but do you guys want to talk about the moratorium language at all? I don't have this in red, so I'm guessing that I feel like we came to consensus on it.
Yeah, I think we did.
I have one question.
Go ahead.
Is it possible to put language in there that this moratorium can be extended for another year or two? If the case arises.
I thought it did
Because
say
right now
that.
it's set to expire at 1 year, right?
Well, that you can renew it.
Where does it say that it can be renewed?
I'm reading. Yes, it doesn't.
So I would like to see something that is stating can be extended for a number of times, continue, 1 or 2 more times to the effect.
Okay, so let's see. So maybe that should be here.
Kara, wouldn't it be simpler just to put in for an effect for a period of 12 to 36 months or until the adoption of the revised zoning regulation is done? Duration A?
Well, I think that, and I would have to double check this with the attorney. But I think that you do have to define the term of your moratorium. And 12 to 36 months seems very open-ended to me. But I think it is perfectly in bounds to say that the commission somehow reserves the right, or the commission may, I'm sort of speaking it out loud as I go, to
Extend it.
extend this moratorium
I'm also thinking,
And I don't think that there is any limit to the number of times you can extend it.
Okay,
Since we're looking at things on an annual review basis, they should be in 12-month increments.
Yeah,
that does
okay,
make
that makes,
sense.
all right, that makes sense, as long as we have the option to keep it going.
Should we have that plural on period?
Um,
12-month periods in case we do want to do it more than once?
yeah, let me think how to best phrase that. May opt to extend this moratorium for one or more additional 12-month periods as they deem appropriate.
The other point to make that I want to make too is that the limited moratorium concept could be applied where someone that owns, 50 acres, because hear me out for a second. The problem with the Chase Road, experience that most of us had firsthand was due to the fact that it was in a neighborhood. So if someone has a large parcel of land and their two options are grow cannabis or build 20,000 houses on it, as obviously an exaggeration, but you get my point. There could be a need in the future for that. So what I was thinking was you would have some acreage number in there too, as a limited moratorium number. That would be, 50 plus or 100 plus.
I do sort of see your point, Ryan, but I think the purpose of the moratorium in its entirety is to discuss the section on micro cultivators and set the limits that you find acceptable. So I would suggest, and the commission can discuss this as they like, but I would suggest that rules should apply equally to everyone as they are adopted. In other words, if 50 acres is the limit that you guys set, 50 acres is the limit you guys set, then your moratorium is over because now you have, or, once it expires after the year, because now you have decided on your parameters. The purpose of the moratorium is to give this commission more time to go back to the language, which when it was adopted, did not reflect changes that the state later made to that microcultivator program, however you want to think of it.
yeah, it was my understanding we were doing doing this so that the state could make up their mind what they were doing and we could digest what they're saying.
Well, that was certainly part of the reasoning. Ray, I see your hand up.
Randy just, he took care of it for me.
Okay, fair enough.
So I guess the other thing to add is that when I did the research on it, I've been reading up on moratoriums and approvals and bans. So there's those three basic concepts at the municipal level in Connecticut. And there are a decent amount of towns that had outright bans. There's, a sufficient amount that had moratoriums. 36 was a number that comes to my mind from 2022, I think it was. I saw some old data that was quoted somewhere on a DCP website, I think. But anyway, the point is that number is probably higher now. And there's also probably some that have, that those things are changing, right? Like Putnam was on the list, for example, and they obviously have a dispensary now. So something's obviously changed since 22 with them, as an example. So I guess what I'm saying is we should have the ability at some point, it doesn't have to be today, to come up with a high number. But I do think that it should be a high number. And I don't think that someone with an acre of land should be growing cannabis. As much as I enjoy cannabis, I don't think that the guy next to you, if you only have an acre, should be, growing it. It's just a personal view. And I tended to agree with the Chase Road group when they made that presentation for that reason in a residential neighborhood. But if you own 100 acres on a farm or 50 acres on a farm, and maybe the purpose of you buying that farm or maybe inheriting that farm, whatever the case may be, or whatever you want to do, at some point, maybe the next generation might be interested in that or something, and protecting that right, I think, is important for people. So.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all, Ryan. But again, the purpose of the moratorium is so that later, once we've made this the adoption of these provisions, whatever the amendments are, and we'll assume that they will include a moratorium. In that interim time, you're going back with your colleagues and
Mhm.
saying, okay, let's look at this topic seriously. And with luck, by the expiration of the 12-month moratorium, you'll be ready to release the moratorium and adopt the new standards that will apply equally to all comers. In other words, here's the threshold at which you qualify for this. And I'll just point out one other thing that you and I have discussed in background. If the gentleman on Chase Road had decided to grow hemp, which also has some of the same theoretical, objectionable qualities, the smell, whatever, it would never have even come in front of you guys because that is protected agricultural activity.
Hemp is federally legal and cannabis is not. That's a major difference. It is a really important point though, Terry, that you bring up.
Yeah.
Because hemp is absolutely legal, and the state of Connecticut nor any other state, although there are a few that did. I think there's 4 states that have some issue with it, but legally the states really don't have much enforcement on the hemp side. And that's a really, really important point because it is an agricultural crop and it is protected all the way back to 2018 when it started. So anyway, it's a matter for another day, but I wanted to lay the tone and just say that I had thought about it and said, even if you went down, I mean, I would favor more like 50 acres, but if it was 10 and then you had maybe some open space in there, you could come up with a formula. I call it the 10% rule. And then maybe you'd have, you'd basically come out with about less than an acre of a grow space. And then you could fit it within the parameters of the state and you'd roughly be within that window. So it's something that I've been looking into and just wanted everyone to understand what I had been researching and what I had found. And I'd be happy to send out some info on that. I thought it was probably something that I should speak on since I know a lot about the industry and have been around it a little bit.
Yeah, and I expect when the commission does get to the point where they're discussing that actual set of regulations, that they are going to be looking to you for a lot of input on that due to, your small business that you own. Dave, I see your hand up. You're on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to mention again, I know I've said it a couple of times, but it's not a crop. It's considered, you need a permit to manufacture and package it. So Randy can grow all the corn he wants on his land, but you can 50 or 100 acres of cannabis, you still need a manufacturing packaging permit in that process. And I don't feel that it's part of anything as it stands now with the statute with the state, that it's anything that we want in the town. So
You're talking about cannabis, I'm assuming, right?
that's correct.
Yeah.
As it was brought to us on Chase Road, but as it is now on 50 acres, 100 acres, you need to have that permit. You can't just grow it and put it in bales.
I don't
think anybody disagrees with that.
debate. Yeah, that's not up for debate. That's a fact. You need and then you need a license too if you want to,
Well, that's
Right,
another
right.
thing that we
You
should
need a
be.
permit, you need a permit from the locality and you need licensing at the state level.
The process to get a license is harder than some people would probably assume too.
Yeah.
It's not something that you can just get done in a month. It doesn't work.
Yep.
Okay. So we did make that addition. Everybody's comfortable with Mike's suggested addition here. The commission may opt to extend this moratorium for 1 or more additional 12-month periods as they deem appropriate.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Let's see. So then it does get down to the lighting standards, and I have definitely been very clear to promise to Russ that we would wait. So we're at 1 hour in. Let's just go quickly back to the top of the document for these couple of definitions.
What about the numbers that Alvin had sent in? You forwarded that?
Oh, well, that was a part of the net buildable area discussion, I believe.
Well, it got into square footage of houses as well.
Oh, we can go back to that topic if you want. I mean, right now you guys have come to a to a consensus. So
All right,
Ray, what you got your hand up?
What about, the shared driveways? I read what was put in there about people having to come to us, to prove why they shouldn't have a shared driveway on, a 3-acre subdivision.
No, on an undivided lot, Ray.
Yeah, but people should not have to come to us and prove why they don't want shared driveways. That's not up to, we're not engineers, we're not developers. We shouldn't be, if they want to put in, we don't live in a fairy tale land. People buy a piece of property, they want their own driveway. They should not have to, if somebody wants to subdivide a lot into 3 lots and they want their separate driveways, they should not have to come to us to prove why they do not want separate driveways.
We're not asking people to do that in subdivision. We're asking people to do that on an undivided lot. In other words, something like a condo association, an office park, a mixed-use development where you have multiple buildings or structures, some of which could be residential and some of which could be non-residential, on an undivided lot. It's totally different from subdivision. You've already got shared driveway standards in there. They are not mandatory, they are optional. So imagine for a moment the condo association off Route 12, if they had a driveway to each of those homes. That would be massive amounts of pavement and inefficient and expensive. So this is only addressing undivided lots. It's already fundamentally in your regulations. This was language to clarify that those shared driveways are strongly preferred on undivided lots, and there are environmental reasons why that is the case, environmental and engineering reasons. So if on an undivided lot, you want to propose individual driveways, the burden is on the applicant to show why it's not feasible. It's a very limited set of circumstances.
If I may,
You may.
I thought we had already discussed that where it was suggested that you have a shared driveway, but it was not mandatory. It was may, not shall. So I thought we settled it there. Not now, if you are saying this, and if they want to put in 6 driveways, that's their right, as long as they are within the permeable percentage of the property.
So we did
Isn't that
have
what all
two
this was about
options.
before?
We did have 2 options. There was the one that we agreed to, as you say, and then as I was reading it afterwards, I had come up with this, which was more in the spirit of why the original regulation was put in place, but also address your specific concern that there may be instances where it is not feasible, which the current regulation does not have an allowance for. And in that meeting, which I believe was a meeting you were not at, Mike, this was what the commissioners agreed to in consensus. If you guys would like to discuss that further here, that is fine.
I personally think that's asinine, because if I want to put in a driveway, I want to put in a driveway.
I'm with you, Mike.
I'm with you, Mike, also.
As long as we are within that formula of 70% permeable or whatever, it shouldn't matter.
well, we could back this down a little bit by leaving off the last sentence. We're saying that where feasible, shared driveways are strongly preferred, and go on, and then just eliminate the burden shall be on the applicant to demonstrate why a shared driveway on an undivided lot would not be feasible.
Randy, you are right on the ball tonight.
Okay, that works.
I shouldn't have to prove anything to you.
You what?
Yeah, I guess I didn't hear him too well because he broke out, but I shouldn't have to prove anything to anyone on my property.
Well, that's what
But
I,
if Randy's in my court, I'll go with it.
Yeah,
Okay,
he's
is
there.
everybody generally okay with taking that sentence out? Sounds like it, but.
Yep,
And there
I'm
it
all for
goes.
that, yep. Thank
Easy
you.
peasy. All right, so let's go back up in the time remaining and just look at some of these new definitions. Some of these were based on what Alvin had brought as we were previously discussing the moratorium language. He pointed out we did not necessarily have some of these definitions in our glossary already. So pretty easy. Cannabis is marijuana as defined in Connecticut General Statutes, section 21A-240, and as may be amended. Oh, and this one, I should have highlighted this one in red too. Just defining an acre as 43,560 square feet. Cannabis establishment, a producer, dispensary, facility, cultivator, micro-cultivator, retailer, hybrid retailer, food and beverage manufacturer, product packager, delivery service, or transporter as defined in Connecticut General Statutes 21A-420 and as may be amended. Thank you for whoever pointed out that that is subsection 420. Cannabis microcultivator, a person licensed to engage in the cultivation, growing, and propagation of the cannabis plant at an establishment containing not less than 2,000 square feet and not more than 10,000 square feet of grow space prior to any expansion authorized by the commissioner as defined in Connecticut General Statutes 21A-420 and as may be amended. Those are all obviously related to the cannabis. And this last one came in, sort of Cindy and Meg both thought it would be useful to have a definition of junkyard, which we see here, an area of land with or without buildings used either as a principal or accessory use or occupied by the outdoor storage of used or discarded materials such as waste paper, rags, scrap metal, building materials, house furnishings, machinery, vehicles, or parts thereof, with or without dismantling, processing, salvage, sale, or other use or disposition of the same. The outdoor storage on a lot of 2 or more wrecked or unregistered vehicles or vehicles otherwise not in a condition for legal use on public highways shall be deemed a junkyard. And I will just say one thing about this. There was previously, before the overhaul, a definition of junkyard, which I believe we did carry into our first draft. And then it was pointed out to me, I believe, by the attorney that we actually don't refer to junkyards anywhere in the regulations. So you're defining a term that has no context within the regulations. I know why Cindy and Meg want this here, and I agree with them on principle. I guess my follow-up question is, once you define it, how are you addressing it within the regulations? And I don't know that I could necessarily come up with in the space of a week anything that would be suitable to put in this update. Alvin, I saw you had your hand up.
Well, I was just looking at the language in your definition, processing salvage materials. You should have materials after salvage. And then the last part, deemed a junkyard with state license.
You cannot use the word junkyard anymore.
Please explain, JBL.
The definition of junkyard has been changed because the industry changed. They call it
Oh, we just lost you. Ray,
it's called the word junkyard is actually inappropriate because now if you were to go online and go into the DMV, everything is considered recycling. salvage, preparation, and all that. A junkyard at one time meant it was anything and everything can go in there. Now everything is kind of has to be separated because it's now an industry and they want it to be a certain way. So if a guy wants to have a salvage yard, when he goes to the DMV, because they're gonna want to know what he is salvaging and what he is gonna be getting rid of to go to the recycling a facility like down in New Haven at Sims Recycling, where they got a big shredder and shears and everything is prepared to go wherever it gets sold to. The industry has changed in the last 25, almost 30 years. So the junkyard is really not.
Should be salvage yard?
Yes. A salvage yard is that they can take anything and whatever they can salvage, but they can still be limited to what they can salvage too. Because they have to meet the DEP standards too as well.
Kira?
Yeah, I see your hand, Jane, you, and then Dave, and then Ray had a hand up, but he might have put it down.
Well,
I know,
John kind of covered what I was going to say about the salvage yard, but should that be more of an ordinance that controls this instead of regulation?
Precisely.
I agree with Ray.
Yeah,
It
Yep.
is the kind of thing that can go either way.
I'm in for that. Consider
Towns
building
do
material,
handle
but
it
I
in
got stuff in my
zoning.
yard.
What was that, Mike?
I said, I'm not sure what you consider building material in excess, but I still have building material in my yard. I'm sure others do also, that I
Okay,
haven't
so,
used.
Jane, go ahead, and
well,
then
I
I
was
guess,
I was trying to come, other than using the term junkyard, I know that there are some places that use the term dismantler. But scrapyard is just as good, but dismantler is used also.
But the scrap yard covers more of the other stuff instead of the just cars.
Yeah, yeah.
A junkyard was a place where you used to go to get car parts years ago, like RPM or Roland Ross and Putnam. That they were junkyards.
actually,
And,
my husband works at an auto recycler in Worcester, so yes.
And I had something else there. Oh, and but it says for the 2 unregistered cars, for it to be deemed a junkyard, it doesn't say anything about people building materials consider it a junkyard.
Oh, it
Cindy,
does. Yes, it
Cindy, are
does.
you still on?
I
It says
am.
scrap metal, building materials.
Can you
House
jump in
furnishing.
here, Cindy, and give us some context here?
Truthfully, I probably just agreed because I was just too busy to even really look at it closely. But looking at it closely, I agree. I don't think it belongs in here, and especially if you're referring to 2 junkyards, because that's covered by the ordinance. Two vehicles, I'm sorry. The 2 unregistered vehicles is covered by the ordinance.
So you would agree that this is a better issue for
The ordinances.
existing ordinances than, okay, which is fine with me. It's
Mm.
probably why we took it out in the first place from the prior glossary. But you and Meg had brought it to me, so I wanted to be sure that we brought it in front of the commission.
Yeah.
So Dave, I think you had a hand up?
Yeah, it didn't make sense having a definition of something that wasn't in the regulations. That's all my input was.
Yeah, I'm sure it was put on my desk and I probably said, yeah, that sounds good. And I walked away from it. Sorry about that, guys. But
Well, I think it also may have come up because of the ongoing problems with those 2, whatever you want to call them, whether you want to call them junkyards, transfer stations, whatever, they're operating illegally. And as I recall, when you and Meg brought this to me, both of you, you had suggested that might have made your job easier over these last few months. But if you think it would be
What
better
2
handled
places
in an
did-
ordinance, that's fine with me.
What two places are you talking about?
The junkyards that you've been getting constant complaints about for the
Port
last.
of Plain and Thompson Road.
Oh. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Well, that's
Yeah, that guy would have done it, would have done what he's doing anyway, regardless. He was told even before he moved into that place that he could not do what he was doing.
Is it worth, maybe considering if you left it in as a definition that as simple as required a special permit or something, Cindy? So you have some sort of language to maybe help you in the future, should someone else get some kind of a honky idea like this guy had?
Well, the thing is you have the regulation that says if it's not mentioned, it's not permitted.
This is also true, although we
Yeah.
do also go out of our way to prohibit a very small number of uses in certain districts. Gas stations being one of them. In fact, that might be the only one that I can really think of. So you could opt to add a prohibition on junkyards as defined here or some other thing to the tables of uses in certain districts. Maybe to JBL's point, that it is possible to get a license as a dismantler or a salvage yard. That business development district, maybe that is an appropriate use there. And then you could actively prohibit it in other uses, which is just a double way of saying, because you're right, if it's not articulated as permitted, it's not permitted. But because you also have safety valve language in every zone saying, make us a proposition if we think it agrees with the intent of the district, we may still grant permission. If you're automatically prohibiting, then there's no question that the safety valve language doesn't apply in that case. Do you guys want to, if you guys want to discuss that as a possibility for the zoning regulations, to add a prohibition in certain tables of uses is not that difficult if you like this definition. But if you prefer to deal with it through ordinance, that's also totally legitimate. It's just that is out of the control of this commission. It has to go through the Board of Selectmen and town meeting. Each of those processes has different pros and cons. At town meeting, it's the general public voting on whether they want something, and you're very much at the mercy of who shows up on a given night, as opposed to the commission, which is always the same 10, 13 people discussing in some depth and then coming to an educated position. But you still may decide that that's not the way you want to go. And any of that's fine with me.
So what was Margaret's point? Did she talk to you in depth about this? What was her point to bringing that to our attention?
I can't remember why Meg brought it up to me, although I know that she did. I do remember talking about it with you. She's the one who handed me a couple of different definitions.
Yeah.
But the conversation I had was with you.
You record it? Just kidding.
No, I only record these.
Can we go back to this as the next meeting? Let me just put some more thought into it.
We can. Is everybody happy with?
Is everybody okay with that?
Well, on
Yep.
on what
Yeah.
what the party you talking, like the guy on Port of Plain Road? Is that what the
Well, it really doesn't have anything to do with him, John, because like I said before, he was going to do what he wanted to do anyway, because I told him whatever he did down there, if he didn't open a restaurant, he had to come to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
okay?
And he said, no, I don't have to because it's zoned business and I don't have to do anything, and could never convince him that he would have done what he wanted to do anyway.
Like he did up on the other
Like
part.
like he did at DeLeo's property.
Well, it's all pretty well cleaned up there.
Oh
too.
yeah, DeLeo's is very cleaned up. Yeah.
Inside the building's clean too, Cindy?
That I don't know because the doors are really shut tight.
Yeah, I know it's cleaned up on the outside, but with, you don't know what you take the wrapping paper off, what it
I
looks
mean,
like.
I guess I could probably call Paul and he would probably be honest with me, but out of sight, out of mind type thing.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
getting
I was
back
just wondering.
to Port of Plain, there is a court order for him to get out of there. It just depends on when they're going to enforce it. So
All right, so let me ask you a question then, Cindy. Setting aside for the moment, the fact that there is this one violator, right? Who, as you point out, probably would have been a violator no matter what rules were in place.
right.
Do you think it would be helpful or neutral? And that may be what you want more time to consider, which is fine, to include a definition for junkyard and a series of districts where it is allowed or prohibited in the tables of uses? Or would you prefer that it be handled entirely through the existing ordinances and an amendment to those?
Yeah, it's pretty much not handled anywhere in town anyway. That's the bottom line of all of this. Because there's so many around town that are just horrible. And it's just not really handled anyplace. So I don't know what good putting it in our regulations is going to do for existing.
Well, it doesn't do anything for existing,
Right.
but it does give you some way to prevent, reduce, minimize future uses as businesses.
Right.
To what I think your point is, you're not going to be able to do anything about people having junky yards, right? Junky yards are different from a junkyard operating as a business, which is a use.
Right. Yeah, let me put some more thought on this. Let me talk to Margaret and see what her intention was on this.
Hey, maybe your husband is rubbing off on you, Tira. You couldn't have said it any better.
I do the best I can with the information in front of me, JBL. All right, am I assuming that these 4 definitions, acre, cannabis, cannabis establishment, cannabis microcultivator, which by the way, are all pretty much cribs directly from the state, are okay with everyone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oops, where am I?
Yes.
All righty, righty. I love a good consensus. And then the last thing I think that was new, let me just go down and check. Yeah, the last thing that was new was Alvin had suggested some alternate language to the special permit stuff after you guys reached consensus. So, I wanted to do him a solid and present it to you guys. So what you have consensus on from the prior meeting in Article 5 or Chapter 275, Article 5, special permits, 5.11, in accordance with CGS Chapter 12, Section 8.3C, which Alvin points out might be 8.3K. 1 and 2, a special permit shall expire not less than 19 years after the date of such approval. The commission may grant 1 or more extensions of time to complete all or part of the work in connection with such special permit or special exception. Actually, I'm going to take out special exception because you guys don't do special exceptions. You do special permits. That was the consensus language you had from before. Alvin's suggestion is as follows: in accordance with CGS Chapter 12, Section 8-3K, 1, expiration date, approvals expire at least 14 years after the approval date, and 2, extensions, commissions, boards, or agencies that should be may grant extensions to complete all or part of the approved work. However, no approval, including extensions, can be valid for more than 19 years from the original approval date. They are very similar. I kind of think that the prior language is closer to the meaning of the statutes, but if you guys prefer Alvin's construction, obviously the last step, once you guys reach a consensus draft, is I send it to the attorney. I can just call Rich's attention to this and say, is this correct? And then we have a backup if it's not, but whichever way you prefer is fine with me.
On the 14 years, at least 14 years, it doesn't give a definite time compared to the 19 years. You know what I mean? Because, you know, at least 14 years could, you know, could somebody say, oh, well, geez, we're gonna expire it in 13 years because of the word least and, you know, at least. The way I read it, it's you know, it's not a definite end date. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do tend to agree, Ray. Alvin, go ahead.
Well, this, the language that I've got here is right out of statute.
Where'd they come up with 14 years? Why don't they say 14 years and 37 days or something?
Well, 14 years after the approval date. That's all permit.
It's almost as stupid as we were arguing about whether it's 133 feet or.
Well, after 14 years, then they come back to the commission and then we can extend it up on an additional 5 years.
So should we have it expire 14 years and take out the at least?
Well, it just expires 14 years after, no, whatever.
Thank God I'm not gonna be here.
I'm with you, Cindy.
Yeah, so am I, Cindy.
Hey,
No,
that's what
I
you,
agree, take the at least out.
that's what you people think.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
What if you finish the project before the 14 years? Does the special permit stay open?
No, of course.
Well, that doesn't specify.
Fine,
This
Mike.
this is what we're talking about.
Well, once you've
Or,
completed the work, you've completed the work.
or upon completion.
It's rare in any town to have anything go more than 14 years. But
I
just
don't
statute
disagree.
allows those two terms.
Well, having been on this board, I understand that
Fine.
words mean something.
There's no penalty for finishing a project early, if that's what you're
No,
implying.
of course not.
I'm not disagreeing with that, but it's saying the permit stays open. Technically, that permit is open.
Well, then you're talking the building department then.
Okay, whatever. I'm just bringing it up.
Well, I think I understand what you're getting at, Mike. I think the point of this language and this provision in general is that if the work hasn't been completed within the time period, then the permit expires. Nobody cares if you get your work done within the time allotted.
I don't disagree
This is
with
what
you.
happens at
I'm-
your deadline.
I do not disagree with you at all. I'm just stating the fact that it's not specifically stated. And we're now getting down to nitty gritty on everything. I think it should be stated,
But the approval,
as in shall expire after the approvals expire 14 years after the approved date or upon completion prior to.
except the approval doesn't expire upon completion, just an approved project was completed. This language is only to address work that has not been
special permit.
completed on a special permit. So if it's completed,
Of course.
there's no
Right.
open permit, it's just completed within the time allotted. Maybe I'm missing something in what you're saying, but I don't
No,
think so.
all I'm saying is it's a technicality. You can read it to me that's an open permit. And you can do something else in there. Because the permit is still open. If you're doing some project and then you want to add something else to it afterwards.
No, then
You
you have
can-
to come with
Then
an
you have to get a
amendment.
different permit.
No, you don't. You already have a
Mike,
special permit to do it.
Mike, these are special permits.
Well,
Yes.
couldn't we say approvals expire 14 years after the approval date or upon completion of the project?
Well, that is
That's
what
all.
Mike is saying, except
Yeah.
that the approval doesn't expire if it's completed. It's just been completed according to specification. There's nothing to expire at that point.
That's fine.
It's,
An
I'm just
open
bringing
permit
it up.
can only expire if the work isn't completed.
No, I
Okay.
get you. I get what you're saying, Tara, and I get what Mike's saying too.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it up now so that down the road somewhere, if someone wants to be some stupid person and say, hey, I can continue on with this for certain things.
Well, then
That's all.
the non-stupid people who work in the office
Let's
will say, no, that's
hope
not
so.
how it works.
Let's hope so.
these are only guidelines, please, please. Let's
Okay, if
continue.
they're on the guidelines. Okay, that's all I have to say on it.
Okay, so I have to say that I still don't know which of these two pieces of language this commission prefers. Which is the only question I was asking, so that we can have a consensus draft.
Keep it simple. I like my language.
I have no problem with Alvin's. No approval, including extensions, can be valid for more than 19 years total. Well, it doesn't say total, but from the original approval date.
Joe, I think we've got to go around the horn on this
Yeah.
one.
Absolutely, I can do that. So your options are the language that's written in black or the language written in red. Mr. Blackmer.
Damn, I was afraid you were gonna ask me first. I was waiting for Alvin to go first, and then I was gonna say the same as he did.
Well, I bet you Alvin likes his language better, but go right ahead.
I like Alvin's language.
Okay,
Ryan.
I'm going with Mr. Hill.
Okay, excellent. I said Ryan, but that's okay. Mr. Knoyer, go ahead.
Sorry.
It's okay, he was muted while he was trying to vote anyway, so it worked out okay.
Fair point. Yes, I agree with Alvin.
Okay, Mike.
Alvin, red.
Alvin.
Mine, of course, Alvin.
Jane.
I'll go with Alvin's.
David.
you've already got a majority. You don't have to go any further,
Okay.
For the record, I was with Alvin too.
but okay,
I think we all were.
you got it.
Thank you, Alvin, as always.
All right.
I escaped that one.
I believe, ladies and germs, that you are good for tonight, because the last topic which needs substantive discussion is the dark skies options, and Russ has very emphatically said he wants to contribute to that conversation. So
Yeah, absolutely, and I would want him to. So
happy to
that's-
call it at 8:38 if you guys are.
yeah, I'll take Alex.
I'll make it.
Before I request the motion, and that our next one of these is a week from tonight. Is that right? January 9th.
Yes,
You're on
yes,
Zoom?
that was the
Perfect.
only other date that had a lot of people respond that they were available. And I have to say, it would be very challenging for me to put another one together as well. So, but I feel very confident that you've left it in a good place to wrap it up next week.
Excellent. So we will be here again on Zoom 1 week from tonight. And with that, Mr. Linke, I believe you were going to make a motion.
Yes, I did. I made the motion.
Motion
Second.
to made by Mr. Linke, seconded by Mr. Blackmer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned at 8:39 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for
Happy New
getting-
Year.
Happy New
Happy
Year.
New Year.
Oh,
Good
yeah.
night, all.
Right.